distinguished guest, Lord Moulton. Before I pass over the, don't worry, I'm only going to speak for 5 minutes or so, and as a way of introduction to his, one of probably his two most active areas of research and public work, I'm going to end up posing a question to him, which he may or may not choose to actually address in his speech. So no guarantees, no warranties. You will not get your money back if he doesn't address the question I was going to pose, because I'm not the main speaker, he is. So, let's very quickly recap. We live in a very, very uncertain world. The only certainty that there used to be until 5,000–6,000 years ago was death. Then, about 5,000–6,000 years ago, there came online another certainty, which is taxes. Fast forward 5,000–6,000 years into the present, and we have the third certainty, which is in taxes. Of course, on one level, with all these increased securities, we do live in a more and more secure way. We have ways of insuring ourselves against almost any danger, sometimes voluntarily, sometimes involuntarily so, when health and safety measures are prescribed for us. The world used to be, of course, much more uncertain. Even today, because of these green taxes, there are millions and millions of people starving, and as Lord Moulton has rightfully demonstrated, throughout the world, when instead of growing food on fields, again, something that we've been doing for perhaps 7–8,000 years ago, since the Neolithic Revolution, we now grow government subsidies on biofuels and everything else. As a result, we literally put many, many people to death or to extreme misery when they cannot afford the food. Remember, as the work of Nobel Prize laureate Professor Vogel has shown, it is not necessarily out of direct starvation that you die. It's enough if you don't have access to the right nutrition, you do not have also enough energy to sustain yourself against infectious diseases. And it's these diseases that kill you, and not necessarily the starvation. So, not a single person must die out of starvation for this statement to be true. There was another wave of mass dying in Europe and in North America. Between 1200 and 1800, about 1 million people, mostly in Europe, but some of them on the North American continent as well, died on the gallows being executed for witchcraft. Now, I'm slowly leading up towards a challenging question. Of course, nobody expects this Spanish Inquisition. And these executions took place throughout Europe. There wasn't really a single place, location, where these executions would be more pronounced, more concentrated. It's only in films. Literally, historical data shows that especially our Hungarian neighbors were very, very vociferous in shouting death to the witch. Many explanations have been offered in the scientific and the historic literature. Many of them have got some economic connection. So the cartelization of the burgeoning male medical profession has been seen as causing this because these witches, which were mostly women, were seen as unfair competition, especially in the activities of midwifery, and that's why they had to be executed, so there is more work for doctors. Alternatively, in competition with various other faiths, including the quickly rising Islamic faith, some other authors have interpreted this as a fight and trying to set the moral rights and delineating the property rights by the Catholic Church. Also, increase in syphilis is documented in the era, as we know from our founders of communism. Syphilis quickly leads to mental illness, and of course these are perfect targets for accusations of witchcraft. Now, like I said, this is most of the witchcraft killings took place between 1200 and 1800. This is a period where agriculture as a share of GDP is of course all encompassing. It's between 96 to towards the end of the period to 61%. The miracle of industrial revolution is only starting in Britain at the end of this period. As we know, agriculture is largely determined by climate. Hugely affects its yields. This is of course all before modern biotechnology, which again makes agriculture much more secure and much more insured against the vagaries of the weather. These swings in climate have potential, therefore, to create really drastic long-term economic cycles. And here is the point or food for thought. There were two main waves of witchcraft. The early one, from the early half of the period, this is all emanating from the Catholic Church and basically is an offshoot of all these heretical accusations, and witches are seen to be just another form of heresy. However, the later, and some authors believe even more pronounced, wave of witchcraft killings, there's very little evidence that it was in any way linked to heresy. It was just witches, not necessarily being linked to heresy. And therefore, there needs to be an alternative explanation sought. Now, it's just possibly a coincidence that according to the NASA definition, there also occurred something called the Little Ice Age between roughly the same years as the second wave of the witchcraft killings, 1550 to about 1850. This is what the Little Ice Age looks like. We've got, where are we? 1550 around here, and 1850 around here, right? So, of course, it's difficult to get these historic data, but this is the consensus view, roughly in these 300-400 year period. These are some pictures from England, of course. Many of you have been to England. The last thing you can imagine Thames being is probably frozen. And yet these are contemporaries who are painting completely frozen over Thames. Of course, today it would be ideal. It would solve a lot of London's traffic problems because you could just literally walk over or just actually ride over it in a double-decker. Would probably pose no problem. Unfortunately, the Thames doesn't do that anymore. And here is the most startling piece of evidence. This is from Emily Oster's paper in the Journal of Economic Perspectives, where she plots out the relative standardized deviations from an average temperature, which is the squared line, the one with the squares, this one, and along it, on the same axis, are the deviations in the number of trials. She has attempted to gather these data from throughout Europe, from various locations, again not to be accused of just being some sort of location specific. And you don't have to be really kind of a proficient graph reader to realize that there seems to be a very clear negative correlation between them. When the temperatures went up, the amount of trials, again this is the main period between 1520 and 1770, the amount of trials goes down as soon as it starts to be cold again. The amount of trials that take place goes up. And of course, we know from religious writings at the time, including from the Pope, that the witch, there's no doubt that the witch can cause bad weather in the contemporaries' minds. And clearly this was a scapegoat for the bad weather. They didn't have the satellite data to monitor what's happening in the rest of the world, so I guess the witch was then the best proxy for a satellite. If you are into more numerical proofs, this is just ordinary least squares estimation. You can see that the main data point here is the standardized winter severity and the combined index. Both of them are actually significant at the 1% level. So we are pretty sure that there is something going on. Some more evidence. The best evidence we have for economic growth, of course, there was nothing like GDP accounting. That's pretty much Lord sorry to say that he was also a Lord Keynes's invention. So, you know, however ancient you might think his thinking to be, he wasn't actually alive in this period, not yet. The best proxy we have for economic growth and economic well-being is, of course, the amount of population. When the economy is doing well, lots of babies are born, and most importantly, they survive. It's not a problem for babies to be born. I mean, the production function of a new baby isn't that difficult. Sometimes it could be actually enjoyable as well. So theoretically, it's during the depressions that you would expect more baby making. However, during the depression, they stand a little chance of surviving into adulthood and showing up in the population figures. And once again, here we have pretty strong. Of course, nothing's perfect, right? It would be something fishy if we really had a direct line. Whenever you see in real economic data a direct line with no kinks, you know you've done something wrong. So this is as best as we can get, and pretty good, good suggestion, that when there was little population growth, there were lots and lots of trials against witches. Meaning, bad economic state, lots of trials. The economy is doing well, very, very few trials. And I'm coming towards the end. So, here's my suggestion. We very much appreciate your work in trying to bring us the truth, and your very well appreciated dictum, go and check for yourself, is going to be very much appreciated, especially by us and our students. But here's a suggestion. If we actually care about people, and especially women, and we don't want them to die out of some silly causes like being accused of witchcraft, should we actually not help a little bit? We all can do our little bit, that's what we've always been taught. Should we not actually help a little bit push global warming along? Thank you very much.